this. That's great. Thank you.
So my name is Hong Yang. I'm from the Department of Geography and Science. It's my great pleasure to share my experience working with the public called the citizen science. Because this is the week we call the Open Research Week. So I try to also share my experience with the open research in my discipline in geography and even science. So I just give you two examples what I did in the last couple of years in Reading. So first one, we call the work together for the cleaner air. So this part work related to the air pollution, because you all know air pollution is a big issue, mainly because the cause of health damage. So globally, around 8 million people died every year because of air pollution. So in the UK, because we have a history, the big smoke in London around 1950s. So after that, also, yes.
Sorry to interrupt. Yeah. There is a message in the chat. If you could speak up a little bit, because probably your microphone doesn't catch everything you say.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's louder. Okay. Yeah. Sorry.
Thank you.
No worries. Yeah. Sorry. That's me louder. Yeah. So the first part of work is about the air pollution. So I think many people realize this is a big issue because globally, air pollution can cause big health damage. Around 8 million people died every year globally for the air pollution, indoor, outdoor. In the UK, since 1950s, the big smoke in London, there are new policies trying to reduce air pollution, for example, particles and some toxic gas. So air pollution improved significantly in last decades, but it is still a big issue. So you can see here some numbers in the middle. You can see here in the middle of the meter, they measure the particles. So now, on average, the UK particle matters level around 8 or 9. So that's below the national guideline, but still above the World Health Organization guidelines at 5. So air pollution is still a big issue in UK. This is a very big health damage for the children because the short-term high pollution can cause asthma, long-term pollution can cause something like lung dysfunctions. So this project, we're trying to encourage the public with some air quality sensor. So you can see the middle, the small one, we call the flow sensor. So they can measure air quality. They can hold the sensor, or you can tie it to the bag. So they can measure air quality from home to school, know the hotspot air pollution, so they can avoid heavily polluted route and reduce the health damage. So the ultimate aim to trying to not only understand air pollution, but also we're trying to reduce air pollution, so have some behavior change. So in the right, we're trying to encourage the parents, elderly, when they drop off or pick up children. And also we call the campaign something like a school street, so encourage more people walk, cycle, rather than bicycle, rather than by public or private car. So the aim not only measure air quality by public, but also trying to change the community, change the behavior, have a cleaner air for all of us. So this is the first citizen science project. Second one is a recent project. We work with the Reading local Nepalese community. So this one we're trying to work with them for the gardening, because gardening is very important, not only for crop, for food, but also for the mental health, can integrate the local community. So this one we're trying to help them understand soil quality. In left, you can see the gentleman, he trying to use some simple sensor, measure soil pH and the conductivity and the soil moisture to understand the soil quality. So in the middle, with some allotment and the crop, trying to help them to reduce the waste and have a better quality crops. So you can see they have good harvest in the end. So this project, we are very happy, we're very glad work with the local minority communities for their crop, but also mental health. So these were two simple examples. We're trying to work with the public, with citizen science. So our goal is trying to have a better sustainable environment in Reading, but globally. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Are we moving on.
Yeah, yes,
Yes,
please.
sorry.
Yes,
I
please,
can
Matt.
share my screen.
Take
Sorry,
over.
sorry, I was expecting direction.
Oh, sorry.
But I knew what I was supposed to do. Can I check?
We see all
Is
your
that
slides.
right? It's not this. Is that correct?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. I did click on it. It
Thank you.
didn't happen. Okay. Right. Well, thank you for asking me to speak. I'm actually I gave a seminar in this in our crops group recently, so I've sort of re-engineered the slides. And I just want to really talk about a specific piece of work that we've done, and it associates with the work we carry out at the National Fruit Collection. I'll just sort of talk through what that means and where we're sort of coming from. And just as a quick background, there's really a sort of 5 key points I think are necessary to understand. So the University of Reading has a contract with DEFRA, so funded by DEFRA, to curate what's referred to as the UK National Fruit Collection. It's a collection owned by DEFRA. The objective of it is that it's maintained as a field gene bank. And that covers a number of different things, but fundamentally we're conserving cultivars, selected elite selections and diverse selections of fruit trees on site in Kent. So it's off site from the university, but they're in the field. It's not like a seed bank. It was established in around 1922 under Ministry of Agriculture funding. And so it has longevity and it's known, and I think that's one of the elements that feeds into where we are. On the ground, it represents about 3,500. We refer to them as accessions, but that's roughly 3,500 cultivars of fruit tree across a range of different species, and we maintain 2 trees per accession in the field. And the nature of it being supported by DEFRA and the nature of it being an international gene bank is that everything we do is in effect in the public domain. And that has 2 different elements actually. So if I can, sorry, I'll try and point on the slide. There's 2 components at the bottom of this slide. On the right hand side is the university formal involvement to some extent with the public domain elements that we have a public database that lists all of the information we have on the collection, and we make graftwood and material from the collection as a gene bank available to people to use under various treaty obligations. There's another component of the wider Brogdale site. It's perhaps in many instances better known as Brogdale than the National Fruit Collections because it's actually also open to the public, and they get numerous visitors, coach tours. They used to run festivals, but they now run pick your own weekends and so on. There's a cider festival, Easter events, all sorts of things, none of which is run by the university. We are supportive but keep at an arm's length to an extent because it's not our role as gene bank curators to be engaging with the general public. So that element is run by an independent charity called Brogdale Collections, and they do a wonderful job of bringing the public in and engaging with a gene bank that we curate. So the 2 things sort of work hand in hand. I'm not going to talk about that element of public engagement though at the moment because it's not really what we do. What I've been involved in more recently, well over a number of years now actually, is we have a number of local and regional collections of fruit trees have established over many years, actually 20, 30 years or so. And there's a whole set of groups, the Gloucester Orchard Trust, Hartley Heritage Trust, March Apple Network, Northern Fruit Group, of amateur enthusiasts who have been out there looking for rare and potentially endangered cultivars of fruit for many years, found lots of things, done a lot of groundwork, and they've been working on these things for 20, 30 years in some instances. And what happened was there was a sort of opportunity where a a chap called Peter Laws was developing a website called Fruit ID, which was trying to service the community and working with us and using the fruit collection as his reference point. And together, the community had started identifying a wish to try and use DNA fingerprinting. We use DNA fingerprinting in the curation of the collection. It wasn't really available to the amateur groups and local enthusiasts at the time. And so Peter aimed to try and bring enough of the groups together with some of their samples to try and we work for bulk, we work in 96 well format for lab sampling. And there was a commercial service offered at East Malling Research, now NIAB EMR, and to access that, they really needed to get a reasonable bulk of samples together. The objective was to try and compare to the data that we hold on the National Fruit Collection. So from the get-go, Peter had approached me and asked for advice, and I'd agreed to advise on the process throughout. And really that's developed into a really nice piece of collaborative research with these groups and various local partners. Just to talk a bit about some of the basic findings, the scheme's been running, so we call it the Fruit ID DNA scheme. It's independently run, but it's a service provision, but we advise and interpret the findings from it. From the original wish to try and get enough people to run 96 samples in 2016, it's now running at about 6,000 samples of apple. I think about 7,500 samples overall have been commissioned and paid for by these independent charity groups, some private individuals. That runs across about 360 different either groups or individual partners who've submitted material to the scheme. And the primary objective was to try and identify things against the collection that we curate. So a reasonable batch, about 3,500 of those samples have been identified and matched against what we hold in the National Fruit Collection. But frankly, to my surprise, and I think to a number of people's surprise, about 2,500 didn't. And I wasn't expecting it to be that many, but it's been quite fascinating. Within that, this is slightly out of date because these 600 results are now in, but I don't know them well enough to be able to split them into these groups. But broadly, roughly about half of those were or about 900 of those samples were duplicated, so they'd come up more than once, and that means they were generally in two different places, which means they must have been propagated and distributed, but not made it into the National Fruit Collection. Overall, we ended up with about 1,000 unique genetic fingerprints for things that were not in the National Collection. And we've done a lot of comparison with collaborators in Europe and identifying that they're unique relative to the wider gene banks as well. To some extent, that was a sort of piece of work in itself, and it was an interesting process. As a curator of the National Fruit Collection, it was useful for me to know. We brought it together into a publication back in 2022. And the publication involved a couple of us from the university who were the people involved here, people from East Malling Research. Peter Laws is the person who created Fruit ID, so is a otherwise retired private individual with no background in scientific research, certainly not in genetics. And some collaborators at INRA in France. So we brought a reasonably nice publication together out of it, and I'm hoping that we'll do some more on some of the other fruit crops in the years to come. One of the things that we identified was that there was a need to try and do something about all these novel findings, and so we created a thing called the Register of Local Cultivars, and it's really been it's based on the Fruit ID DNA scheme. It's based on the unique findings and all some of the other findings in it. And we've established a group that it's a community-led group. To be fair, it's chaired by Peter and myself, act as chairs of the group. And the objective of the group was to bring representatives from various the community groups and respected, knowledgeable experts on old fruit cultivars, all into one place, so we could try and come to some sort of agreement on what names to put on these new findings. We've gone through the process over a number of years. We've got to a stage where there's now 440 named names that can be associated with these different genetic fingerprints, and some of them are recognition of apples that are 200 years old and had otherwise been lost. So there's some fascinating stuff up it, and the groundwork that the groups do is incredible. They've traced things on maps, they've traced things through old homological textbooks. There's a huge amount of work gone on in bringing the evidence together to agree that naming. It's involved about 70 groups or individual people, and we are just in the process of organising what we call RLC 10, which is the 10th meeting of that committee. I think we've had a couple out of sync, but we normally meet annually in November because that's when people have got through a lot of their orchard work. And we have samples to bring, and we've hosted, apart from a couple online during COVID, we've hosted all but one of those meetings. The other one was at the Cider Museum in Hereford. This is roughly what the meeting looks like. It's a great day from my perspective. We hold it in agriculture. We've got people in this room from up and down the country, Norfolk groups up in Yorkshire. We've had people over from Ireland for it. We've got people from Gloucestershire, Suffolk, Brighton. A number of people around this table have written books. They have genuine expertise. Most of them you can probably sense from the image. Many of them are retired amateurs, but are hugely enthusiastic and take it very professional. Take their work very professionally. They bring samples, we lay them all out, everybody gets to look at them, taste them, scrutinise them, turn them around and have a good look to see whether or not they believe that they are genuine candidates. So it's a really good day, and we sort of plough through a whole lot of stuff every year. Just to talk briefly about the sort of impact of it, I've just flagged up. This is a website from Fruit ID where Peter's put various things, and he's trying to bring sort of user guides on DNA fingerprinting that I've edited for him. Although he wrote, to be fair. It's really good actually, because we've got to a stage where I started off advising on every single entry, and actually now the group can deal with most of it themselves. So they come to me with problems, and we're involved in it, but they don't need my advice on every single case. We've taught them and trained them how to deal with genetic fingerprinting, which is good. A number of the groups, March Apple Network, this is off their website, have got sections about the NFC Fruit ID project. The Brighton Permaculture Trust have got things on their website about the genetic fingerprinting. The South Local and Orchard Group have got this is DNA fingerprinting output evidence that so the community groups have seen it as really good validation of some of the work they've been doing for many years. And a good way of engaging with the collection in a way that really couldn't be done until we brought this sort of collaboration together. From our perspective, aside from being a enjoyable and interesting piece of work, we do manage a public gene bank. We need to engage with the public, and so it fits with a number of things we do at the National Fruit Collection anyway. But I've put a couple of things, I've just used as examples of them, a couple of things we've put in the university research blog, I think, if I get the names correctly. One of which was to do with the paper that we published, and the other is to do with the fact that we've eventually just got to a stage where we've agreed with DEFRA that over the next contract phase of the National Fruit Collection curation, we're going to start bringing some of these findings into the National Fruit Collection, and they will be maintained under DEFRA's stewardship with our care in perpetuity in the International Gene Bank, registered with the International Treaty and so on. And so we've really gone sort of full circle and brought some of this stuff out of the findings that some of these people had identified in old orchards, old kitchen gardens 20 years ago, and been looking after themselves until then. And those collections are at risk as well. So I think it's important that we bring some of the material out of them, because they don't all have successional planning, and the National Fruit Collection has governmental support in theory in perpetuity. It's protected by an international treaty. And I think I'm going to stop there and thank everyone. I'll happily take questions at the end.
Great, thank you very much, Matt. And Chris, over to you now.
Can you see that?
We see all your slides, so if you can
Exciting.
hide.
Do I click that one? How's
Yeah.
that?
Yeah, that's good.
Cool. So I'm Chris. I'm a postdoc in the Department of Sustainable Land Management over in the School of Agriculture. And for the last 4 years, I've been running a citizen science project called Fruitwatch. So similar area to Matt's work. So we're looking at monitoring fruit tree blossom through citizen science. And just a tiny bit of background. Obviously, fruit trees are kind of everywhere across the UK, both in terms of like commercial orchards and also in people's gardens and things like that, stately homes and out and about. Fruit trees everywhere. So they're kind of culturally important, economically important plant, I suppose. And climate plays a large role in influencing when fruit trees come into flower. So when you see these awesome displays of blossom, like we've got some on campus that have come out recently that've been pretty spectacular. And with climate change and with kind of warmer springs, we see fruit trees blossoming earlier in the year as the climate warms, which might not seem like a massive problem, but actually increases the risk of the blossoms, which are really kind of quite delicate to risk of kind of frost. So something, if the plant flowers a bit earlier, but there's a frost that stays kind of at the same time, those flowers can be quite damaged by the frost. And also fruit trees, a lot of different cultivars of fruit tree rely on insect pollinators to set fruit, which kind of important, particularly in a commercial kind of setting. So without those pollinators, we often see that fruit yield is reduced when it comes to harvest. So we kind of wanted to look at how this flowering date changes over time. And there are some data sets that exist about this. I know Matt and the team at the National Fruit Collection have an excellent flowering date data set that covers lots of different cultivars of fruit tree, I think going back to the 1960s. I can see, Matt, I think I've got that right. But what we kind of don't have is much spatial variation in that data. So a lot of these data sets come from one orchard or one kind of set of orchards in quite a local area. So what we've developed initially in conjunction with Oracle for research is this kind of recording app website, which we call Fruitwatch. It's kind of a really simple, I guess, mobile. We run it as a website, but we could easily turn it into an app. So it's a website that people log into when they see a fruit tree in blossom, and fill in a really simple recording form, basically, that helps us understand when fruit trees are blossoming, where they're distributed, and kind of able to link the spatial kind of the spatial side of fruit tree blossom with the temporal side. So we get kind of essentially a data set that covers a wide area. And initially, obviously, we've only got 4 years of data, but the hope is that this becomes a data set that can run for quite a long time and obviously be used for a variety of different purposes beyond kind of what I hope to use it for. So it's really a simple kind of system. So all it requires is a mobile phone, basically. I'm sure maybe some of you have used similar kind of recording schemes before. There's hundreds and hundreds of different schemes, citizen science schemes, kind of similar design and similar setup to this that you can get involved in. But what we're interested in is kind of looking at where the people are, where you are when you're recording a fruit tree, what the date is, what sort of tree it is. So initially we started looking at apple trees, pear trees, cherry trees, and plum trees. And we've also kind of in the last couple of years extended into some more kind of, I guess maybe the word's exotic or less common tree types, so things like apricot. And if you know the cultivar as well, that's really helpful. So a bit of information about the tree, and then just kind of how far through its flowering stage it is. So it's quite a simple system. It takes like maybe a couple of minutes to upload a record. And since we've started this in 2022, we've had over 7,000 submissions. So this is kind of an example map on the right. This is our records for various different apple cultivars in 2022. So we can see that actually we get really good spatial coverage, and hopefully if we can kind of continue this, could become a really valuable kind of resource for anyone that wants to do kind of climate and kind of phenology is the kind of term we use for when things flower. So anyone that wants to do kind of studies in that sort of area, hopefully this will become a really, really useful data set. In terms of what we've done with the data so far, we've run a kind of pilot project just looking at the data from 2022, seeing if we can pick out trends in flowering dates over space, so over the distribution of Great Britain. Do certain areas see earlier flowering than other areas in that year? And actually what we saw, which has recently been published, is that kind of maybe unsurprisingly that warmer areas tended to record blossom earlier in the year than kind of slightly cooler areas. Yeah, so that's a bit of a kind of a whistle-stop tour through Fruitwatch.